Hey, so a friend of mine was listening to my ramblings about the ketogenic diet and fasting, and he basically wasn't going against or anything, but he's like, I don't know, I eat tons, and I can lose weight. I told him, I said, yeah, well, that you're lucky. He goes, but I said, unfortunately, not everybody is so lucky. Some people just naturally have a difficulty metabolizing carbohydrates. Some people, through years and years of higher glycemic index foods, can also develop an intolerance to metabolizing some metabolic issues that we can get in insulin resistance, hypertension, years and years of calorie restrictive diets where they manage to lose weight, but then a year down the line, because the body's catching on that you're restricting consistently calories, starts lowering the metabolism, which pretty much makes sense. In our society, fat is viewed as something that's bad, and it is. But that's because we're outside our natural environment, where it was a lot more of a rugged environment and a difficult life. But the periods of having trouble to find food, in fact, was actually beneficial to humans. So we were put in a harsh environment that actually, in a way, at least metabolically, was beneficial for humans. What else? All right, so my friend said that he can lose weight. He doesn't need intermittent fasting, and he doesn't need a ketogenic diet or anything like that. So people that are not in that situation, unfortunately, some medications can make you put on weight. Yeah, so some medications can make you put on weight, right? So when you do have a slowed metabolism, when you do have insulin resistance, when you are obese and you're having hypertension, all of these things are the worst, triad, or the worst coupling of symptoms to give you a heart attack or to give you diabetes, to make you really, really ill. So the issue is that a lot of the people, once they have been obese, the fat actually produces leptin. It secretes leptin, and leptin is a hormone that's telling you, hey, stop eating. So obviously the body's sensing that your fat storage is a little too much than a healthy reserve. It starts secreting leptin, kind of signaling to your body, hey, you're not hungry, you're not hungry, you're not hungry, stop it. But just like insulin resistance develops because of the way we eat and frequency that we eat, and insulin's always present around the cell saying, open the door, open the door. Eventually it becomes resistance. And the same thing applies with leptin. Obesity, once you get, unfortunately, to that spot, leptin is being secreted, telling you, stop eating. You become resistant to the signals, and therefore you're obese, you're hungry all the time. When you calorie restrict in any diet that's calorie restriction, you're even more hungry. So you realize the dire situation that people find themselves in, and they feel that they're a failure because they feel that they don't have willpower. But in fact, they're getting screwed over by their own hormones. Now, if you're in this situation, you need a very precise and specialized strategy to reverse all of this. First thing, how do we fix somebody who's obese, that is leptin resistant, can't control their hormones? All right. So first of all, as this patient, if that patient would start phasing out, obviously in a slow manner, so that they are successful at doing it, start phasing out the junk food, right? And then after, once they get that, still allowing them to have the healthy carbs, and already they'll probably, drop weight because they're just taking out all the crap. Then you slowly start decreasing the carbohydrates. And as you start decreasing the carbohydrates, you start increasing the fat. So proteins have a proper response by our hormones saying, the steak was really good, but I don't want 5 of them. As well as fat also has a response. Also, I'm full. But unfortunately, carbohydrates just don't have that signaling. And we all know that, you know. Why can't I eat three expensive steaks, but I can't, I can't do that. I'm going to feel nauseous if I force myself to eat more protein. But yet I can eat like a whole tub of ice cream and still be hungry in a while. So carbohydrates not only do not signal properly that you're satiated, in fact, they probably stoke your appetite. Hence why in restaurants we get appetizers that are usually carbohydrates, right? The bread. It's going to stoke your appetite. It's not going to make you full. So it doesn't make sense that we should be eating 60% of our macronutrients, which is what is suggested as carbohydrates. It's not going to be satiating. It's dense in calories. Most people that are in this, vicious circle are probably not that active. They're really not feeling great. So they really don't need all of that octane glucose to get through their day. That can be supplied with fat and a restricted carb, and then you have ketones. And ketones is almost, as long as you have fat, an infinite supply of energy. You don't receive energy as quickly as glucose, but when you do receive energy, it gives more energy units per oxygen molecule. So more ATP, more adenosine triphosphate within the mitochondria is produced. It gives a much more stable and long-lasting energy. When I did my 5-day fast, I was already in ketosis, and I was already pretty much easily doing one meal a day. So when I decided, just to skip that meal, and the next day my hunger was still under control, and I ended up doing a 5-day fast. It wasn't for weight loss. It was for the therapeutic catabolic process where because you're not ingesting and you're not putting anything into your body has time to go and start cleaning house. It's a process that is a catabolic process. It's a cleaning process, and it's 50%, as I mentioned in other videos, of your health. A lot of our sickness is not only what we're eating, it's also the frequency that we're eating, and it's also the quantity. Now, calories in and calories out, this simple equation for obesity is such an oversimplification of such a complex disease as obesity, just negating all of the hormonal aspects that can be working against you, not knowing how we can change and try and make hormones work for us. So the ketogenic diet is ideal for somebody who has become intolerant to carbohydrates, and we know that when somebody's becoming insulin resistant. It just makes sense to help reverse this, that they would use, out of the three macronutrients, fat, protein, and carbohydrates, a macronutrient that has the least insulin response, therefore trying to create a lower insulin environment. Once the macronutrient that is probably while you're eating, creating a lower insulin environment because it just spikes it less, then we can work on, because our appetite will come under control, we can work on stretching out between meals, keeping those the insulin environment very low. And it's a pretty simple pathology, insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes. Too much insulin by what you're eating and the way you're eating, and that's made you sick. And it's almost just as simple to reverse type 2 diabetes. Do the opposite. Eat so you're creating an environment that's low. It's not brain surgery. Just a big myth is that fasting can lower your metabolism, and it makes sense. Hey, you're starving yourself, you're not eating, your metabolism will drop. You have to continually eat to keep the fire burning, and it makes sense, right? But no, it just doesn't work out that way, because when you're fasting, when you're in a very short fast or a prolonged fast, growth hormone is heightened. It's secreted, and also luteinizing hormone, which is a precursor to testosterone. Your metabolism doesn't decrease. Your cognition, if you're already in ketosis, is actually heightened because of the very stable supply of ketones to your brain. Your metabolism has to increase because humans fasted unwillingly, and that means that they had to be very active, very keen, on on par, on the ball, when they had to go fasted to find animals. If they became lethargic, if they became tired, very foggy, then humans would probably die. So the fasting mechanism, the fasting pathway, is just a forgotten secret, and I think it's a large part why we're being sick. We've been convinced by big food industries that we need to eat often. We've been convinced by food industry that it's all about calories. So technically, dude, you can drink all your calories in Pepsi, and if you're 500 under your current weight, you'll lose weight on Pepsi. No, different macronutrients have different hormonal responses. When you ingest fat, you have the proper hunger hormones, as mentioned before, that tell you to stop eating. So no, it's not the same, taking Coke in calories as compared to fat. And protein has a certain hormonal response, and carbohydrates, which is very different from fat. The reason that fat hardly has an insulin response is, think of it, insulin will always create an anabolic effect to shuttle stuff back into your body. You can imagine that you're fasted and you have no glucose, and now you need to produce ketones. Therefore, you need to burn fat. But the minute the fat goes into the bloodstream, you have an immediate insulin response telling you to go back. That's why fat doesn't have an insulin response. That's why people are biohacking to lose weight, which is not healthy, but it works. Fat fast. You fast and you just eat fat. Why does it work? It's because it's just mimicking within your blood what's going to happen when you fast. The only thing that's going to really go into your blood is a lot of fat and fatty acids and ketones. You'll always have a little bit of carbohydrates, because during a fasted state you are producing glucose through gluconeogenesis, which means that as long as you're supplying yourself protein and fat, the glycerol from the fat can be coupled with a little bit of mixing and matching, and we produce glucose. Hence, the glucose is not a essential macronutrient. We don't need to ingest it because our body produces it. So that's pretty much the end of my video, guys. I hope you learned a little bit. All right, thanks. See ya.